Hi. Hi. Hello. My name is Tabitha. I'm very introverted. I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. This is just a basic little introduction to say hi. Excuse me that I'm doing different forms of videos, so I'm trying out different things. I was doing the shorts to just kind of share with people some of my silly little sewing projects. The knitted cardigan, that did pretty good. The second video, I guess, was a little long and not quite as algorithmically optimized, I guess. But this is a long form video. Go ahead and skip the parts that you don't enjoy. Just trying to see, what do you guys watch? What do you guys not watch? How long do you watch it for? Etc. Excuse me as well, I'm in my pajamas, so we're getting really cozy today. So, you'll probably notice me as I go along become a little more warm to the camera and what's happening. And that's just because I've always enjoyed creating videos, but I've never really, unless it was for like a school project or something for work, I'm not usually talking in front of the camera. So excuse me if I ramble, excuse me if I seem like I don't know what I'm saying, because I don't. Oh, I have no idea what's going on. So for this month, this video is for a Cloak sweater. And by Cloak, I mean the brand by Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and Pokimane, or owned by them at least. I can't remember the beginning lore of it. Iron Lung is coming out, I guess at this point, in 5 days. And I'm really excited. My cat just jumped off of something and it startled me a little bit. So my plan was to get a couple of items online that were Cloak brand and kind of merge them together using, I don't know where I'm going to put it, one of these videos that I have in a playlist of mine. I think it's called Arts and Crafts or something like that. Arts and Design. I can't remember, but I have a public playlist that I save everything that I use to. And this was going to be the kind of wavy sweater cutout project. I found it really interesting. I thought it was really cool. I wanted to try it between either two sweaters or excuse me, sweatshirts, or to a sweatshirt and a shirt, or just something. I wanted to try it out. So this is what that is. So I had an idea and I made it happen. When Markiplier announced Iron Lung, I went on eBay and searched for very loved Cloak pieces. I settled on these two for this project and roughly outlined a plan for tearing down and reassembling these pieces. To begin, the Sherpa has to go. It's pilled, piled together, discolored, and has a lot of residual laundry soap when I rinsed it out before the wash.
He has to go, blood.
I ripped the seams of the zipper, arms, banding, and hood. The pockets and body panels stayed stitched for the duration of the project. While seam ripping, I pinned all parts of the jacket back into place. The best way to store projects is the way they're already built. The fabric is pressed into shape from age, and it helps me visualize what I'm doing during the process, so the black parts are staying as they're built. I have some sturdy galaxy-themed fabric left over from a pirate cosplay project and thought the colors would make the sweater a cool reversible piece. I wasn't in the mood to trace, and I always cut too little for my comfort anyway, so I just laid the pieces down and cut them. Please, fellow Markiplier and Cloak fans, don't tomato me yet. While the shirt was still assembled, I traced out what I thought best matched the concept I drew. This project is a lot of sculpting. Most of the rebuilding process was making sure my lines were wavy. Redesigning the sweatshirt started with reattaching the front part of the bottom band back on. I'll sew the back of it onto Galaxy fabric later. Before cutting anything, I pin up the shirt cutouts with the graphic against the wrong side of the jacket. I want the graphics to show when I cut the black fabric later. Here's the most grounding part of the project, underlaying the body. I had to switch my needle out once during this project and used almost 200 yards of thread. The whole project took about 12 hours to complete, from teardown to rebuild. I'll be taking out a large chunk of the jacket, so I go ahead and stitch 2 lines for support. I always enjoy watching the sewing process, so I'll leave you alone for a second if you also enjoy that kind of thing. While sewing the shirt onto the arms, I realized that I was making it harder on myself keeping the center seam intact. This project is about simplicity, so I ripped the center seam to continue. I think in the future I'll adopt a new angle for these videos because I didn't think about how often my head would be in the way while investigating my work. After the body and arms, I finished underlaying the hood. This was the most difficult piece to sew with the round shape, but not impossible. I planned on adding some embellishment later, and I wasn't sure what, so I left the center of the hood empty. Before cutting anything, I sewed together the 3 body panels and 2 hood panels. This is not an exact science. I gave myself a ton of sewing space, so I'm just pinning and stitching. The clips here of me cutting the jacket don't do the transformation much justice. I highly recommend looking up some underlay and overlay videos from other YouTubers with more glorious transformations. You'll see very briefly that I'm using a flashlight. That's because the black thread is very difficult to see on the black fabric. It was easier just to grab the flashlight than it was my craft lamp. The video doesn't show it, but I'm moving very slowly and taking breaks when I'm tired. To begin preparing the jacket, I attach the galaxy fabric arms to the jacket arms by sewing them to the wrists. I take a long time to consider how I'm going to actually proceed.
Hurry up already.
And decide to sew together the center seams of the inner and outer arms separately. I'm making sure to miss the wristband. I'll hand stitch that later to control the look. The bands at the end of the sleeves were stretched out, so I stitched a straight line with a 1/4 inch allowance along the ends with the band stretched to tighten them up. I went over this twice to really set the tightening and reinforce the ends of each seam meeting at the wrist. Then I restitched the wristbands into a tube to finish the arms. The original white drawstring worked, but it needed some color. I found a super cute 9-tailed fox mug rug on eBay and thought it'd be cute as the embellishment on the hood. This mug rug came from a monthly book box. It's technically vintage at this point, but the thickness will give my hood some structure and hold it upright. I spent an absurd amount of time checking and planning throughout this process. The project took about 12 hours to complete, and I think planning took up to 2 hours. There have been many projects I've messed up moving too fast, so I'm taking my time these days trying to absorb the steps. At this point I have 5 pieces. 2 assembled arms, the outer body, the inner body, and the assembled hood. It took me a long time to consider how to reassemble the whole thing, but I was definitely excited that it was finally taking shape, which is cool. Before I get to the bulk of reassembly, I reattach the jacket arms on the outside part only. I don't want to reattach the inner and outer parts because I want to check that I have everything right side out. Here I am checking everything again and pinning the outer hood to the outer body. Still before moving on to interior parts, I attach the pinned portion of the hood. And there's one final check before I start closing it all up. Both sides of the zipper get reattached with the ends of the interior fabric hidden underneath. There wasn't a lot of space to do that, but just enough to fold it under and stitch where the previous line was before seam ripping. This part of the jacket is meant to be heavily used, so I stitched those lines twice. I'm finally on the last stretch. The bottoms of the interior panels were slightly long, so I laid the jacket out flattish and removed the excess fabric. This was going to be hidden underneath the bottom band, and I didn't want it to be permanently bunched up. Keeping with Cloak's hidden in plain sight theme, I placed the jacket's original tag along the interior band. There was some extra fabric in the center, so I just pinned it into a fold behind the tag. There are a lot of pins in this part. Finally, lastly, eventually, at long last, the last stitch. But I ran out of bobbin and was hungry, so I left it for the next day. And guys, let me tell you, I am so happy to be done with this project. It was a lot of fun, and I think it turned out really great, but it was a long project with a lot of planning that I haven't done before. I'm happy I did it because I did say in one of my shorts that I wanted to take some pieces apart, and I think I finally did that. Other than the slight low-high angle on the bottom, there are only 2 issues. I need to hand stitch the wrists closed, and I need to stitch back over the end of the band. But the zipper works, and there are no torn holes or holes I can't fix, so I count this as a huge win. Okay, bye.